Well, the other big speech that happened throughout the week was at the legislature because Colorado's 2016 legislative session began on Wednesday. The budget is expected to be a primary issue as the debate over TABOR and the hospital provider fee continues. In his State of the State address, Governor John Hickenlooper told legislators that if a compromise cannot be struck on the provider fee issue, then TABOR should be re-examined. David, when 9 News' Kyle Clark had a chance to interview Governor Hickenlooper after the speech, he asked him point blank, was that point he made about handle the fee or re-examine TABOR was a threat? Do you think it was a threat?
Oh, nice little Bill of Rights you got there. Too bad if something might happen to it. Of course we should re-examine this fee, and we should do it in accordance with our state constitution. A fee is when you pay for something and then you get something. For example, you go to the rec center, you pay a fee of $1 and they rent you a towel. When this hospital fee is nothing like that. This hospital fee is we take a lot of money from hospitals and we spend it on a social welfare program, Medicaid. Okay, maybe that's a legitimate government thing to do, but that is not a fee in any legitimate sense of the word. When TABOR was on the ballot in 1988, it was narrowly defeated, and one of the strongest things the opponents said in their commercials was it covered fees. And they said, look, this is ridiculous. You're going to have to go to the voters when you, then they used the towel example specifically. In 1990, the revised TABOR, which passed, took the fee thing out. And apparently that convinced enough additional voters that sure, we want to vote on taxes, but we don't need to vote on fees. Those voters who passed TABOR in 1990 were not thinking and had no reason to believe that somebody would try this absurd thing of having this enormous tax on hospitals to spend on social welfare and say that is a fee. It's not a fee, it's not an enterprise, it is just what social welfare government is. Tax some people, give the money to some other people. And so if you want to step outside the taxpayer's Bill of Rights to say how that somehow doesn't count as the normal operation of government, go to the voters and ask them, and they could decide to give you permission or not.
Joey, you're our guy on the Hill. How was the speech received, and how do you think the legislature is starting vibe-wise?
Well, it's starting very rocky. You know, normally we're talking about bipartisanship at this stage of the game, and then it turns ugly later. It started ugly way before the session this year. And part of the reason is the way the Democrats have framed this thing. They say, you know, if you don't let us do this on the hospital provider fee, well, there's going to be no money for roads or education. And that's kind of a false bargain. We have a $26.4 billion budget. You know, Brian Del Grosso told the Denver Chamber of Commerce last week that since he's been in the legislature, he has seen the general fund grow by 43%, and not a dime of that new revenue has gone to transportation. What Governor Hickenlooper and the Democrats have offered Republicans is a Faustian bargain. You know, sell your soul for a piece of gold, and your soul is your soul of TABOR. And Republicans say that the floodgate on government growth and spending is TABOR, and go find the money somewhere else. To say that that the reason that we don't have new money for roads and schools is because Republicans wouldn't give an inch on the hospital provider fee. Well, you know, why hasn't it happened in the past legislative sessions? Why haven't we found that money? You know, I don't know. I don't think the speech was funny. It was amusing. They threw rice on the governor who's getting married on Saturday. It was great in that response, but I think in the afterglow of today, one day later, I don't think there was room for compromise. The governor called for compromise, but he wanted compromise on his agenda, not, you know, I'll take some of your agenda, you take some of mine.
Miguel Wheeler talking about the hospital provider fee and a lot of other minutia from the Capitol Hill around this table. But I think when it comes to regular voters, they may not get into hospital provider fees or other kind of politics. They just want the highways to be paved and things to work. What do you think the average Colorado voter is going to take away from what's going on right now at the Capitol?
Well, first, one is to understand how the process works. Unfortunately, we do not provide that kind of education is as open as it used to be, or as many people take an interest into it. Worst thing we do is we complain about the pothole in front of our house, but we don't realize that there is a whole system that's designed in order to fill that pothole, along with adding lanes to our highways and reducing our congestion. And, you know, look at what Fast Tracks has been able to do. That took forever to get voted in until the demand was there. So really, it's going to be how well the message gets across to your average voter in the different ways that media is now, whether it's through internet, whether it's through, you know, television sources like this, that they can get the information on what would best represent their interest and how they're going to vote. So it's really going to come down to breaking down the argument and making it as simple as, how do I get that pothole fixed in front of my house?
Well, I know if we can advertise, you can find out how to get your pothole fixed on this program. Our ratings will skyrocket, so hopefully they'll put it right here.
Along with the hospital.
Yeah, exactly.
Hospital fees, okay.
Patty, the governor drew a clear line in the sand. Can he hold sway on this issue?
Well, sooner or later he can. It might not be in the legislature. It may be at the ballot box. We already have Building a Better Colorado kind of gearing up to put different ballot measures on, and they could certainly see that maybe this is the year, if they want to really make changes in the budget, that something has to go on the ballot about Tabor. I agree it might also be a time to put the hospital provider fee on if they can't get it out of the legislature. Part of the problem is there is no average Colorado voter except the person who's mad about the pothole that they just drove their car into. I think everyone could agree on that unless they rode their bicycle into the pothole. It's really tough to explain it, and you cannot count on the media to do that anymore. What media? I mean, Joey can talk about how many people are at the legislature now compared to what it was 20 years ago when there was blanket coverage. So it's going to be who can get the word out in a smart way, using social media, using other means, who's got campaigns, not just with money, because we've seen lots of expensive campaigns that haven't worked, like the education program of a couple years ago. But if you explain it in a good, smart way, which is almost impossible with the hospital provider fee, I could see there could be a lot of action at the ballot box in November.
It should be very interesting November. I can't wait.